Welcome back to Freight Waves Now on this Thursday morning. We'd like to welcome our next guest. We've got Narita Taylor from OOIDA with us today. Narita, thank you for joining us, and we're going to continue this conversation around what's going on with fuel prices and how it impacts the little guys as well. So thank you for being here on Freight Waves Now.
You bet. My pleasure.
So let's just start off right away talking about some laws concerning surcharges when it comes to fuel right now. What are those laws and how are they impacting specifically our owner-operators?
Sure. So what we want people to understand, something that's actually one of the biggest misunderstandings regarding fuel surcharges is that we get a lot of calls from people who seem to misunderstand that they should get the fuel surcharge passed to them because, after all, they are the ones paying for the fuel. They're the ones standing there in front of the pump watching the ticker go up on the cost and coming out of their pocket. But what people need to understand is that there's nothing that guarantees that you're supposed to get that fuel surcharge passed on to you. And so what I want to tell listeners and viewers who are owner operators is that you need to be sure that you are implementing a fuel surcharge into your contracts. And fortunately, OOIDA has a fuel surcharge calculator on our website.
Oh, nice. So I mean, that's one of the things, and welcome to the show, Narita. I appreciate you coming on, because this is a huge topic, right? We talk about how, higher fuel is not necessarily that bad of a thing for enterprise carriers that have those, rack plus or minus, and then a fuel surcharge that's based on the DOE, the retail, right? It is really the quickness or the steep increase in rack prices where they get crunched a little bit like that. But that lagging indicator can actually be a benefit at times, but the owner-operator, it's a little bit different story. How many of them are starting to adopt this type of thing, and will this really get them to do that? And how hard is it for them to negotiate that type of stuff into their contracts?
Sure. Well, I'm not sure how many do incorporate it. We're always encouraging our members to incorporate fuel surcharges into their contracts, into their method of operations. The cost of fuel is the single biggest expense in running a small trucking business. So most owner-operators, they know this. They know that this is something that they need to watch. And so incorporating a fuel surcharge is an important way to mitigate. Like you said, a larger fleet can adapt. They have ways to deal with it. But the sudden spikes, especially like what we saw back in 2008, those were, some rough times there. And so coming back from that can be kind of tough.
And so when you're talking about that and fuel charges, a lot of folks are wondering, okay, well, how can I just save my fuel a little bit better? How can I be a little bit more economical and think a little bit more so that I'm fueling up less instead of having to kind of wonder about those surcharges? That might be the harder way to save at the pump. Can you give us some tips on fuel saving strategies for drivers?
Sure. So one of the things that you can do is to try to avoid reasons to idle. Idling can use a lot of fuel. You may need to do that for heating or cooling when you're getting your hours of service at a rest area or at a truck stop. But if you can avoid that by either finding loads or routes that would avoid the need to do that, you can get devices for heating and cooling so that you don't have to idle. You can also slow down a little bit. We know that, driving 70 miles an hour or more is actually probably wasting fuel. Now, getting to know your engine, getting to know what your truck can operate at, your cost per mile is really important in your operation. So if you know these things, you know your baseline, then you know how your truck operates and what the best possible speed is for driving at to save fuel. Try to find some flatter routes, avoid hills. I know these things are not always possible. I do know someone that actually sold their truck and trailer for a more aerodynamic equipment because of the cost of fuel. So, these are things that you can do to try to mitigate it. And like I said, the fuel surcharge is definitely something that people should be implementing if they're not already.
And so with new drivers entering the market, they might be kind of coming up into this market right now, frazzled with the amount of information to learn, and then double frazzled when you're looking at the current state of the world right now and figuring out how to own a trucking business or operate a truck in the crazy climate that we live in. With OIDA, you mentioned that you guys have that fuel surge calculator. Do you guys have any other resources, either online available or available for folks to use as they're getting into the industry, to kind of teach them the ins and outs and give them some really good legs up when it comes to getting established?
Sure. So we do have a variety of free resources on our website, ooida.com. Our foundation here puts out a lot of information about running a business, about running a small trucking business. A lot of that information is for free. If you are a member, you can call here and ask anything that you want to know. If you're a driver that's been a company driver for a while and you're starting to think, I think I could do this as my own business. I want to do a certain niche kind of loads, or I want to, call my own hours, run my own business. Call us first. It doesn't cost anything to just call us. And like I said, we have a Truck to Success program that is put on by the OOIDA Foundation. You can find it on the website. Lots and lots of videos, documents, links, all kinds of information that can help you before you start your business.
Excellent stuff. Narita, let's change gears a little bit here. Let's talk about Washington State and, their legislation's approval of the the restroom ports legislation there. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So Washington is one of our favorite states right now because they are working on a couple of different things that are very, very helpful to truck drivers. I think most viewers know that there's a serious shortage of parking and for trucks nationally. And the state of Washington, their legislature has been working on some things that are very helpful. One is about rest areas, trying to keep rest areas open. And another one has to do with ports and keeping restrooms available. Now, that may seem like a really strange thing to have to talk about, making sure that restrooms are available for truck drivers, but it's actually a really big deal because one of the biggest holdups in the supply chain is waiting at a shipper or receiver to be loaded and unloaded. Truck drivers are just stuck there. And so we just need to make sure that they're treated like human beings and provided access to things like clean restrooms. And then again, like I said, this is all from the state of Washington, who are just about to send a couple of really good things to their governor to sign.
And so keeping on that governmental thread, we've got the EPA Clean Trucks announcement, and the EPA now starting to kind of get that same thread along California's Air Resources Board and coming down pretty hard on the side of clean air regulations. Can you talk a little bit about this and then the impact that it would have on especially the owner-operators of those smaller trucking companies who don't necessarily have the cash flow right now to invest in equipment that would stand up to these regulations?
Sure. So we're not too surprised that the EPA has come out with this notice of proposed rulemaking for their Cleaner Trucks program. It's something that we're real concerned about because whenever they have imposed especially stringent rules on trucks and their emissions, the technology isn't necessarily there. And when you're a one truck or a small fleet owner, having your truck down for maintenance because of these unreliable newer technologies, that can be harmful to your business. A larger fleet can kind of mitigate having a few trucks here and there in the shop being repaired because some of this technology is causing some problems. So this is something that we're pretty concerned about. We would have preferred that they had listened to the concerns of small business truckers when they put this together, but that's not something that happened. And like you mentioned, they did allow the state of California to apply even stricter rules in their state.
Yeah, unintended consequences sometimes, right? There's some good that come out of this, and we can see that, but then there's unintended consequences, not thinking through exactly how this affects others, right?
Yeah, we all want cleaner air, Yeah. As a matter of fact, trucks today, the newer trucks, they actually put out cleaner air than what goes into them. So technology has been improving, but when you start putting these newer rules, you do need to take consideration from the trucking industry on the consequences.
Absolutely, Narita. Thank you for being with us today. You mentioned your website, but if folks want to get in touch with you, maybe a little bit more personally, or get in touch with anyone at OOIDA, where should they go to do that?
Sure. You can call here and ask for me. The number here is 816-229-5791. And if you go to our website, ooida.com, you can find the information about the fuel surcharges and other stuff about running your business. And if you want to find advocacy information, you can go to fightingfortruckers.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being with us today. We'll catch up with you guys next month.